students. Welcome once again to the online classes held by Sri Vidya Mandir Matriculation Higher Secondary School, Utangari, Krishnagiri district. I once again extend a warm welcome to all the 11th students who have started their educational career in our school, who have joined our school newly also. I hope you are all safe at home and you are facing this corona in the correct way. Today, this video deals with the 11th standard English Unit 2 supplementary lesson, A Shot in the Dark. A Shot in the Dark, written by Saki. Before we start this lesson, let us look at the title, A Shot in the Dark. A shot in the dark is an idiomatic phrase. The title itself is an idiom, which means a shot in the dark is nothing but an act whose outcome is not foreseen. It is a guess. So, this story is going to deal with something on assumption. It is a very interesting story written by Saki, whose real name is Hector Hugh Munro. Hector Hugh Munro. Popularly he was called as H.H. Munro, but he always used to write under the pen name Saki. He was a well-known British writer who was born in Burma on 18th December 1870 and he breathed his last on November 14, 1960. He was a very popular writer who started his career as a teacher, then became a police officer before he took up writing seriously. He then began writing stories, and most of his stories were witty, mischievous, and sometimes macabre. His macabre stories, satirizing the Edwardian culture and society. He was called the master of the short story and was often compared to the great US writer, American writer O. Henry, who was also a great short story writer. He has also written a full-length play, The Watched Pot, in collaboration with Charles Smart. Overall, mostly all his stories written by Saki, that is Hector Hugh Munro, is worth reading and makes reading interesting. Now, let us go into the content, the theme of the story. The theme of the story, A Shot in the Dark, is based on misconception. It's based on misconception. The gist, I can give you the gist in this gist. It is a short, amazing story. It is an amusing story in which a man, the hero, the protagonist of this short story, who considers himself to be very smart, astute, and observant, finds that he misjudged a personality. He misjudged the personality at the genuine plea of a stranded youth, and how he repents for his misjudgment. This is the plot of the story. Before we move into the story, now let us have a look at the glossary. The glossary, the difficult words, the idiomatic words that may come across, and once you know the meaning of these words, it will make your reading interesting as well as easy, so that you can reproduce the paragraphs or whatever questions that may arise from this lesson in a simple way. Now let us have a look at the glossary, the difficult words from the lesson with their meaning, and wherever it is possible I will blurt out some sentences for examples. Let us go to the glossary. The glossary. Embarked. Embarked means boarded. The passengers were about to be embarked. He embarked on a trip around the world. Embarked. Espied. Espied means caught sight of. In today's relevancy, we can say the Indian Army espied the movement of the Chinese soldiers along the Ladakh border. Espied, caught sight of. Ineffectually. Ineffectually means in vain. In vain. Again we can say that the Chinese besieged the Ladakh border ineffectually as they were thrown out. Ruefully means regretfully, sorrowfully. The little boy ruefully apologized for breaking the window. Ruefully. Pantomime. Pantomime means exaggerated behavior. Pantomime. The vigorous pantomime of the child did not draw anyone's attention. Pantomime. Quid. Quid. Quid is a slang word for pound. 1 pound sterling. It means 1 pound sterling. He has paid 400 quid. Exchequer. Exchequer is national treasury. Exchequer. The Chancellor of the Exchequer has announced a few tax cuts in this budget. Exchequer. Crest. Crest is a symbol representing a family, a symbol, a design, an emblem which is reproduced on a writing paper, which is sealed on a writing paper representing a family. Tackle. We have the word tackle. Tackle is equipment, an equipment which is used for a sport or for a task. Tackle. He forgot to take his fishing tackle, fishing equipment. Tackle. Discrepancy. Discrepancy, it means difference. Difference. There is a discrepancy in your account and his. There is a difference. Note this word. Soidza. This is Soidza. Soidza means self-styled. A self-styled. He is a Soidza novelist. He is a self-styled novelist. Astuteness. Cleverness. He is known for his astuteness. Sedately. In a dignified manner. In olden days, all the business was carried out sedately. Chase. Chase. Chase is a horse-drawn carriage. As soon as the chase arrived, he boarded it. He took his seat on it. Like chase. Expounded. Explained. Expounded means explained. The priest expounded the scriptures to his disciples. The priest expounded the scriptures to his disciples. Explained. Volubility. Volubility means fluency, talkativeness, the fluency with which one talks. He speaks with such volubility that we are inclined to believe him. A sentence for volubility. Blonde. Blonde means pale yellow hair. She is a blonde. The blonde haired woman looks beautiful. Current. Current is an animal. represented in the act of running. An animal represented in the act of running is a bird. Pilgrimage. Pilgrimage is a pilgrim's journey, a visit to a holy place. He decided to go on a pilgrimage to Kashi or Kanchipuram. Acquaintance. Acquaintance, a person who knows him slightly but not closely. He often meets passengers while traveling. Traveling acquaintance. Acquaintance. He has a wide circle of acquaintances. Gratified. Gratified means satisfied. He is gratified with his work. Smothered. Smothered means suppressed. Suppressed. The animals were smothered with plastic bags. Smothered. A batsman, while he is batting, smothers the spin with his bat. Suppresses. Smothered. Elusive. Elusive means difficult to find. Something which is someone is difficult to find, catch or achieve. Elusive. If you remain lazy, success will become elusive. Alleged. Alleged means accused. Accused but not proven. Accused. He alleges that the minister has taken a bribe. Alleged. He alleged that the minister has taken a bribe. Repose. Repose means state of rest. He says that he finds absolute repose when he is at home. Rest. Electrified. Electrified means shock. She was electrified by my behavior. She was shocked by my behavior. There are a few idioms in this. On approval. On approval means the act of approving or sanctioning. My request for a loan in this bank is on approval. This is an example for approval. A shot in the dark, I have already told you, it is a guess, an act which cannot be overseen. A guess. These experiments were little more than shots in the dark. Double distilled idiot. Double distilled idiot means an absolute idiot. Don't behave like a double distilled idiot. Making up lost time. Making up lost time. That is managing one's time which has been wasted to catch up with it. If you keep on watching TV serials, you will find it difficult to make up your time. Making up lost time. There is also a tinge of coldness. A tinge of coldness means when somebody is in fear, the voice may change, it may trail off. When she is in fear, her voice gets mixed with a tinge of coldness. A person, when he speaks emotionally, the voice might change, it might trail off. That is called a tinge of coldness. A tinge of coldness. These are the few difficult words from this lesson which you should read and understand before going into reading of the lesson. Once you understand the meanings of these words and how to construct a sentence with these words, then you can identify yourself with the lesson very, very easily. Now, let us go into the lesson. I will give you a short summary of the lesson, a shot in the dark. Now, moving on to the story, first let us have a look at the characters involved in the story. Philip Sletherwhite, the protagonist of the story, a political aspirant, a man who aspires to become a politician. He is the hero of this story. Mrs. Salpin Jack, a rich and influential lady of higher rank. He is also addressed as Honoria. Honoria means honor, a woman of reputation. Bertie, second son of Mrs. Salpin Jago. Second son, a Soilsworth cadet of the Salpin Jago family. A youth, a 22-year-old youth who is busy holidaying himself. He is on his rustic holidays, countryside holidays. Claude People Casey, a friend of Philip Leatherby, a lawyer. These are the very few characters that are involved in this story. Now, let me tell you the story. Philip Leatherby, a political aspirant, he wants to become a politician, is on his way to meet Mrs. Salpin Jago, a rich and influential lady. This lady is very, very influential. She is of some social importance in London, but of considerable importance and influence in the county of Shropshire. Now, this Leatherby is going to meet her because his personal interest is bounded with the eastern division of the county of Shropshire, where he is on the verge of representing his party in the parliamentary election. That eastern division of Shropshire, the parliamentary seat was held by a gentleman who does not intend to seek re-election, and all the party managers are seriously considering Philip Leatherby as his possible successor. And this lady, Salpin Jago, has a high influence in that part of the town. And to get her influence, this man is on the way. He was rather delighted because he had actually met Salpin Jago at a friendly luncheon party. He had an acquaintance with her during a friendly luncheon party, and he was satisfied because she had invited him to her country residence at the Brill Manor. He was invited by Salpin Jago to stay with her in her country residence from Friday to Tuesday. So, in this scenario, he boards a train. He boards an almost empty carriage with the pleasant consciousness of being embarked on an agreeable and profitable pilgrimage, because he wanted to earn the goodwill of Salpin Jago. So he boarded the train and was waiting patiently for the train to leave. He spotted a few passengers on the platform, and among them he found a club acquaintance whom he called near to the window and spoke to him. The club acquaintance knew that he was going to meet Salpin Jago and told him that Salpin Jago was a very good hostess. She will keep him entertained in a very respectable and happy way. And as the train left, he bid goodbye. As the train left, Philip Leatherby started reading a magazine, and he had not even read even a couple of pages when he heard a suppressed curse. It was the curse of a young youth, a young man of 22-year-old youth. He was frantically, furiously searching for something in his bag. He opened his bag, he took out a 6-penny bit, he placed it on the seat beside him and looked at it ruefully. and then started searching for something elusive, some non-existent object in search of that. He was searching his whole bag. He emptied his bag on the seat beside him. A cigarette case, a silver pencil box, a matchbox, a latchkey, a rail tickets, all these were thrown on there. But he was still not satisfied because he was not able to find the thing which he was looking for. Now, his curse became louder and louder, which distracted Slatherby. And he looked at him. That boy introduced himself as Bertie and told Slatherby if he was his mother's friend. He heard from the club acquaintance at the railway station that he was on the way to meet Mrs. Salpin Jago, and so he introduced himself as the second son, Bertie, second son of Salpin Jago. He informed Philip Slatherby that he had left behind his purse. When Slatherby asked him, is he searching for anything, he told him that he had left behind his purse, which he was, while on the way before he started, he had taken out his purse and he had to put a seal on a letter, and he had left behind, he had forgotten his purse on the table. And it was his exchequer, as there was 3 to 4 quid in that purse. And now, as he had left his purse, he had no money, he had only that 6 pence left. So he requested for help, monetary help from Philip Slatherby. After a bit of momentary hesitation, Slatherby agreed that he will give. He told the youth then recalled that he had not been to his home, he had not seen his mother for the past 6 months, as when he was away yachting, when she had visited the hometown last time, and he had been moving around, and even now he requires that 3 quids or 4 quids which he had asked from Slatherby to stay, as he was going to stay at Brown Quay in a countryside inn to fish. He wanted to go on a fishing expedition for 3 days and assured Slatherby that he would return home on Monday and repay him the money. At first, Slatherby agreed to that hesitantly. Bertie recalled that by leaving the purse at home, he had learnt a moral that he should never try and convert things to purposes for which they were not intended to. And that too, to have a purse with a crest, and then ask for help was something odd. When he said about that crest, Mr. Philip Slatherby asked him what was that crest that he used. That boy, that youth, told him that he had a demi-lion as crest, holding a crosslet on its paw. That was the crest he had used, that he had left behind also. This creates a little bit of suspicion arises in Philip Slatherby's mind. He had already met Mrs. Salpin Jago, and in one of the letters that she had written to him, listing out the trains that go to Brill Manor, Philip Slatherby had found that she had used a greyhound current on the notepad. The crest which she had used was a greyhound current. But this youth had come out with the demi-lion crest. Then he asked, without telling him that he had met his mother before, he tries to trap him and asks him how his mother looks, whether she looks like him or not, whether his appearance matches with his mother's appearance, so that he can easily identify her at the railway station in case if she comes to pick him up. The boy replies that his mother looked exactly like him. She had dark brown hair with a fair complexion. Now, this surprised Mr. Sutherland as his doubts were being confirmed. He had actually met her. He told that boy that he had actually met his mother the last Monday, and she had a blonde, rich blonde, profound blonde hair. And so he thought this boy was lying, and he was on the verge of denying him the money. After telling the appearance of the mother, the boy got up readily and picked up his equipment and belongings and was about to alight from the train, stating that his destination had come. And when the destination came, when he bid goodbye and asked for the money, other boy denied him. He told him all these reasons that he was lying and thought that he was lying. He told that the boy had told him that the mother's appearance had dark brown hair, whereas when he had seen her, she had blonde hair. Further, regarding the crest, the boy indicated that he had the demi-lioness crest, whereas the letter which he had received, which Sletherby had received from Salt and Jago, carried the greyhound crest. The boy told him that the greyhound was the Jago crest, whereas the demi-lion was the salt pen crest, and he told him that he had the right to use both the crests, whereas he was really salt pens, he always wanted to use the demi-lion crest. This was informed by the youth to Sletherby, but he did not believe him. He thought he was lying. He told him that he was not a man to fall for his prey, and he denied giving him the money, and the train left, leaving the boy stranded on the platform. And that Soidza, cadet of the Salto Jagan family, was cursing furiously when the train left. Now, as he was going on the train, Mr. Sletherby thought himself to be very smart and patted himself for his intelligence, and thought that he could recount it at the dinner that evening, and he would earn the applause of all the guests there. So, imagining these things, while he was going, the train drew at his destination, and he got down at his destination, where he was received by a tall footman and another noisy voice of Claude People, Casey. The Claude People, a friend of Flith, who had also travelled in that same train. This man, he had travelled in that same train. He was a very talkative person, and he had travelled in the train without speaking to anyone for a long time. And now, as he met Sletherby, he started talking continuously. He told him whether, you are also come to meet Sletherby, you are on the weekend here, let us play golf so that you can take revenge on me for having lost at the Hoylake. He said about the courses that the courses at April Manor were good and not as bad as one considered it to be. So, as they walked and went, they looked at the car that had come to pick them up. The car that won the approval of Claude People was a sumptuous looking vehicle, expensive vehicle, the last word for elegance, comfort, luxury and convenience. It was an expensive vehicle which had the blend of a hotel lounge. It had space like a hotel lounge and an engine room. So it was, Claude told Sletherby that times had changed, whereas ancestors used to travel in chase. This is a post-chase period. Ancestors used to travel in chases, and now they are using motor vehicles like this, that too expensive vehicles like this. He started talking continuously about the perfection and fitting of the car, its graceful lines and symmetrical designs. It masked the fact about that it was a very enormous wheeled structure which blended it combined the hotel lounge and an engine room together. It was so luxurious a car, and he started speaking details about the car. Slatherby was not interested. He did not listen a single word also, not one of the details were observed or listened by him, as his eyes were fixed on the door panel of the car, as he had found two crests. One, the Jago crest, that is the greyhound current, and the other one, the Salpin crest, the demi-lion holding a crisscrosslet on its paw. Now Slatherby was shocked for words as he looked at these two crests, and he was gazing at it. And this man went on talking continuously as the car sped towards the countryside, towards the Brill Manor, the country residence of Sarpanch. As it was going, this man thought people talked continuously in an unstoppable manner. He was talking things about what he had personally observed, his personal anecdotes, general observation, political gossips, right from the inner stories of the Dutch labor troubles to the private life of Prince Designate of Albania. He was keeping on talking with such volubility that he was talking about the alleged happening at the 9th hole at Sandwich, and the remark made by the Duchess of Berkshire at a Tanjoti. All these remarks were being continuously spoken with such volubility, fluency and ease. But Slatherby was not interested in it. But suddenly, as they were about to enter the gates of the Brill Manor, he switched over his remarks to the details of their hostess. And these remarks on the hostess attracted Slatherby's attention, and he started listening to him now. He told Slatherby that their hostess was a very brilliant lady, a very self-made lady who had a very level-headed mind, and she had the knack to pick up something or to drop something, to support a person or to reject a person. She did everything exactly at the correct manner, at the correct time. She was such a very level-minded, clever lady. She, of course, was too good. She had she was a very, very influential lady, and she was so restless. She was spoiling herself and her chances by being too restless. She also had a good appearance. She stated that she had also good appearance until she made that idiotic change. This aroused curiosity in Philip Slatherby, and he questioned him, what change? Then Claude told him that she had dark brown hair, and just a day, 5 weeks before, she had electrified everybody and appeared with blonde hair. She had changed herself, her appearance into a blonde haired lady. This created a type of shock in Slatherby. He now regretted his misjudgment. He knew that he had misjudged. He had not believed the story told by Bertie. He repented for his misjudgment, and he did not know whether he would be able to secure the goodwill of Slatherby in order to get nominated for the parliamentary seat. This left him dumbfounded. But he realized his mistake. Thus, from the story we see that even though however smart we are, however overconfident we may at times may feel to be, we can also make mistakes. This misjudgment, this story recalls in a humorous way, contradicting the adage, seeing is believing. It is a humorous recollection disproving the adage, seeing is believing. Thus, this short and interesting story should have been understood by you, so that when you read the lesson once again line by line, you people, you students should be able to easily understand and write the summary of the story. The theme of the story, as we said, is misconception and misjudgment. That is the end of the story. I hope you have understood well and will do a proper reading and then write the summary in a neat manner. Now, this is the assignment I have assigned you to write the summary of this lesson in about 200 words. The hints, I have given you the hints. Philip Weatherby traveled to meet Sal Punjago, influential lady. This hints are given. You write a decent introduction about the story, about the author, 2 lines about the author and an introduction about the story, and then you start writing the paragraph. As you summarize it till the end, you write a conclusion, a relevant conclusion that how embarrassment was caused to the clever, observant man, protagonist of the story, Philip Weatherby, who regrets his misjudgment. Thank you. I hope you understood this lesson, and we will meet you once until we meet once again. You stay home and stay safe at home. Thank you.